What is up, everybody? This is John with Archer Film. Thanks for watching, subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing, all that good stuff. Please comment if you got something to say. I really do appreciate the feedback, especially if it is constructive or contrary and thought out. All right, so this is Terrifier week and horror month at Archer Film. I've been watching the Terrifier movies. I just watched the first one the other day. I dropped a video on that, so check that out if you want to hear my thoughts on it. I just watched the second one, and of course I plan to watch the third one this week, which is killing it at the box office. So, let me just say, if you haven't watched any of my videos, I love horror. It's got a special place in my heart. I made a horror film. I love horror film. I try to watch as much horror as I can. It's just one of those genres I've always loved, probably since watching The Shining when I was like 6 years old, and reading Stephen King and stuff like that. So I love horror, and I am insanely happy that Damien Leone is killing it with these movies. Nothing makes me happier than a self-starter filmmaker, right? Both films I generated myself, and the next one I'm going to as well. So I love to see a filmmaker who has basically won the lottery by doing all the hard work himself. So what's important to remember about the first Terrifier, like when the first one came out, it was 2016, and Hollywood was shitting out sequels and remakes and very uninspired horror. We saw the unnecessary and uninspired money grab for the Blair Witch remake. We saw Conjuring 2, also garbage to me. We saw the feature version of the viral short Lights Out, which completely failed to hit. Although I was happy that the guy got, to make a feature off of his short. Like I said, that kind of stuff always makes me happy. We had Ouija, Origin of Evil, also very bad. We had the horrible Cabin Fever remake, also pointless. The really bad Kevin Smith movie Yoga Hosers, and of course Rob Zombie's okay, 31. It wasn't bad. It was, maybe as good as Devil's Rejects, but those two to me are like the best movies he's made. Everything else he's made is kind of garbage. We did get some great horror in 2016. We got Train to Busan. Awesome. Autopsy of Jane Doe, another great one. We also got Don't Breathe, which is not bad, and also Raw, which was really fun cannibal movie. We also got Terrifier 1. So here's the interesting part. In the decade prior to 2016, like maybe, the 15 years before, whatever, torture porn became like the thing, like its own subgenre of horror, maybe best illustrated in the Saw franchise. But Terrifier came out when that subgenre was kind of going away. Like the torture porn stuff was saturated and people were kind of done with it. And I feel like it didn't really stand a chance at finding an audience. But what's interesting is I feel like the few dedicated superfans that it did get, I feel like it was people hung in there and it was rewarded with a bigger budget sequel. It wouldn't be until 2022 when the sequel came out. And, it felt like the perfect time for it. The PC/woke crowd in Hollywood was taking over. And it was another mediocre year for horror to me. There was a bad Halloween entry by the very overrated David Gordon Green. There was Ty West X, which wasn't bad, but nothing new and interesting, really. The big budget Nope, which had some great moments, but again, Jordan Peele needs an ego check, I think. There was the horrible Texas Chainsaw remake that only had one good scene. That's a bus scene. You all know what I'm talking about. And the rest, there was just not really anything else notable in 2022 as far as horror goes. And then there was Terrifier 2. Now, the word of mouth on this thing, the first one I dismissed as silly slasher, horror clown movie, and never watched it because of that. The second one came out and it started to get people talking with this extreme gore and gruesome set pieces. And I feel like whatever they did with the first one, it persisted all this time and broke through with the second one. And what's cool about this is the word of mouth and the shock factor drove a budget of $250,000 to roughly $15 million. And that is incredible. It's very rarely done when you make a movie for $250,000 and it's able to break through like that. So that was exciting. I think that's great. Like I said, mad respect to Damien Leone. He does all the special effects himself. He does a lot of it himself, and I just love that. So even though the first one was made for $50,000 and the second one nearly 5 times, here's the thing about Terrifier 2. The storytelling isn't 5 times better, unfortunately. Now, Damien Leone has said he wanted to expand the world, introduce his own iconic final girl in the vein of Laurie Strode or Sidney Prescott, and he does that here with Sienna. The problem is there's too much time focuses on her and her family, and none of it really feels authentic or fleshed out, just a sort of mishmash of emotions thrown together. You know, he's trying to create a mythology and expand the world when one really isn't necessary. Like, if you think about iconic horror characters like Leatherface or Michael Myers, you know, they're emotionless for the most part. One is a psychopath and the other is a product of, you know, all the killing done at the slaughterhouse. And it's 10 times scarier that way. We get the sense that these are enigmatic people with disturbed pasts, and they're out to kill. And that is terrifying. That sort of unstoppable, you cannot reason with it force. It's just scarier to me. I've always found that scarier than the supernatural, like the Freddy or the Jasons, where, you know, they're just like, there's some sort of supernatural element to it. That's just not really scary because you don't really see that in real life. But the sort of lunatic who just cannot be reasoned with, I think there's tons of those in real life. So, in my opinion, trying to expand and explain the universe a little more, it becomes bloated. There was some interesting stuff, you know, Sienna and her brother's history with their dad, and, you know, in the pictures that he drew and all this stuff. There's a sort of link clearly to Art the Clown, and I found that interesting. But there was just too much of like the family, you know. There's too much of the mom who is just not a great actress, and the dialogue is just, there's no subtext to it. It's just on the surface. It's literally her just yelling and screaming at her kids the whole time. And it's just bad, you know, until her wonderfully gruesome death. I couldn't wait for her to be off screen. Now, you have Art the Clown, and you have his little sidekick, the Pale Girl, which I loved. Their whole opening intro to each other in the laundromat was just gruesome and weird and disturbing, and I dug it. But the other side characters, the Sienna and her brother and stuff, like it just spent too much time with them. Now, there's a screenwriting axiom: get in late and leave early. You know, you cut away quickly. His scenes go on way too long. Scenes that are merely secondary or even peripheral characters, they just go on way too long. Also, the mom and Sienna, like, they look like they're maybe 10 years apart in age, which is just weird. I mean, like, Sienna's supposed to be in high school, and she looks like 30, and the mom's like maybe 40, if that. So I just found that funny. And also, like, 3 or 4 of the female characters all looked the same. They all they were like brunettes with like dark eyes, kind of pale skin, and they all looked the same. So there was a couple scenes where, like, it was her friend Allie, I think, where I was like, wait a minute, who's this? Like, they kind of look similar. Anyway, that's just me nitpicking. But anyway, the supernatural and the mythology and the symbolism, you know, kind of goes on way too long. And, you know, it's just not why people go to see this kind of a movie. Like, we go for the kills, we go for the gruesome, the carnage, all that stuff. And in the middle, like, with the first Terrifier, because of the budget, it is lean and mean, and there's a lot of like chasing around and stuff, but for the most part, it's just all fun. In this, he's trying too much. Like, the first real kill, like the first really good, gruesome horror set piece, is 105 minutes in. There's just too much other stuff going on. Now, I did enjoy it. Like, it's the bedroom scene, if you guys know what I'm talking about. So by the time the movie gets to its climax, it just becomes lots of symbolism and like the mythology and like, you know, badass chick fighting. And I just hated that. Like, what makes Art the Clown so good, I think, and what made the first one so good is this unrelentless, he's coming to kill you. And like, you can't really stop him, even if you fight back. And instead, it becomes like he's the Sienna girls like fighting him, and it just becomes a big battle. And I'm like, dude, in this day and age, when it's like the tough girl chicks in the past decade, the tough badass chick, it's just such a cliche that it's just boring to watch. So that part I did not like, but there are some great disturbing visuals, especially at the very, very end, the whole sort of end sequence with the locked up chick. Ugh, gross. I loved it. So overall, like, there are some great, like, gruesome scenes I loved, and definitely some disturbing moments. But I think in expanding the universe, he kind of detracts from what the strengths of the franchise are, and I found myself kind of bored in between, waiting for like something to happen. Like, and he also thinks characters like yelling and fighting each other is conflict, but it's not real conflict. It's just emotive. There's nothing beneath it. Like, you don't need all that. And he should watch a movie like Hereditary to get a sense of like what true tension is between family members. You know what I mean? Like, true tension is often unsaid. But we get why it's there, not just people screaming and yelling at each other, because it exhausts you before like you can even focus on the good stuff. So those are my thoughts. Terrifier 2, great horror set piece moments, but mediocre. And again, it made Agrippa money, so I'm happy about that. And the third one is killing it right now. I'm gonna check out the third one. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next video.